received breaking news from Buckingham Palace, which has announced that the King has been...
What if the King's darkest secret just became the royal family's biggest crisis? King Charles III has finally broken his silence on a battle few knew was worsening, his cancer diagnosis in 2025. This isn't just a personal fight. It's a crisis that threatens to shake the monarchy to its core. A video has surfaced, one meant for Prince William, and it's causing shockwaves behind palace walls. In the next minutes, we'll reveal what's in that message, why it's tearing the family apart, and what it means for the future of the crown. Stay with us. This story is far from over. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The silence that once blanketed Buckingham Palace has finally been broken. After months of speculation, thinly veiled whispers, and carefully worded palace statements, King Charles III has spoken, publicly, directly, and with a gravity that underscores the severity of what he's facing. No longer the vague rumors floating in royal circles or the speculations fed by tabloid conjecture. The truth is now out. King Charles III is battling a rapidly advancing form of cancer. But that's only the beginning. In a world captivated by pageantry, lineage, and the mystique of monarchy, this revelation shakes not only the British crown, but the very foundation of royal stability in the modern age. This isn't just a health update. It is a moment of historical reckoning. Behind the gates of Windsor, beyond the confines of Balmoral and Clarence House, a battle is being waged, not just within the king's body, but within the royal family itself. And now, as His Majesty confronts his mortality with an unflinching public address, the world is forced to reckon with the question no one dared ask aloud. What happens if the monarchy is suddenly without a clear moral anchor? Let's rewind just a few months. When King Charles first announced his cancer diagnosis in early 2024, the public reaction was one of shock, yes, but also hope. After all, he had maintained appearances. He smiled for cameras. He met with dignitaries. He gave the impression of control. But those who read between the lines saw something different. A paler complexion, longer periods away from the public eye, a noticeable reduction in public engagements. The media politely danced around the question, was the king getting worse? And then came the leaks, quiet at first, emerging from obscure royal insiders. A nurse allegedly overheard whispers about experimental treatments. A staffer at a private hospital reportedly saw the king being wheeled in at midnight, surrounded by security. A rumor that his illness had metastasized. But as with all things royal, none of these hints could be officially confirmed. The palace stuck to its script. The king was receiving treatment, his spirits were high, and he remained involved in affairs of state. Until now. The carefully orchestrated video message released by Buckingham Palace was not just another royal update. It was a seismic event, delivered not with pomp and protocol, but with bare humanity. The king appeared not in full regalia, but in a simple chair beside a fireplace, clad in modest attire, his voice slightly hoarse, and his message delivered with piercing clarity. He acknowledged the progression of his illness. He admitted, in no uncertain terms, that his battle with cancer had entered a more critical stage. And most stunning of all, he referenced a personal decision he had made, a video will, recorded in advance to ensure that certain instructions were carried out in the event of his incapacitation or death. Let that sink in. A monarch, still living, still technically ruling, preparing for the end. Not through legal documents alone, but through a filmed testament. And according to those closest to the situation, this final message is not a bland ceremonial goodbye. It is personal. It is pointed, and it will divide the House of Windsor. Royal insiders confirm that the existence of the video will have sent shockwaves through the royal family. Some are reportedly furious, others blindsided, and at least a few sources say, are desperately trying to keep it from ever seeing the light of day. Why? Because the contents don't follow tradition. Because names are named. Because secrets long buried may be finally dragged into the daylight. This isn't just a story about a monarch confronting cancer. This is a story about the unraveling of centuries-old protocols in real time. It's about the struggle for control in a family defined by its secrecy. It's about who the king trusts and who he doesn't. And above all, it's about the looming question. If this video is ever released, what truths might it expose? What family rifts might it deepen? And what will it mean for the future of the British monarchy? For the public, the image of King Charles has always been layered. He was the waiting heir, the son overshadowed by his legendary mother, Queen Elizabeth II. For decades, he was cast as the flawed prince, criticized for his cold demeanor, scrutinized for his tumultuous relationship with Princess Diana, and doubted as a future king. But as the years passed, and especially after the Queen's death, a transformation began to take place. He became not just a monarch, but a symbol of generational transition, a bridge between the old world and the uncertain modern era of monarchy. And now, as that symbol falters under the weight of terminal illness, the royal family must once again face the crucible of public opinion. But this time, it's not about weddings, feuds, or fashion choices. It's about mortality, legacy, and succession. It's about who stands to gain and who stands to lose when the king finally departs this world. And what makes this moment uniquely chilling is that it's unfolding before our very eyes in real time. But there's more. Buried within this unfolding saga is another layer, a layer that even seasoned royal watchers didn't see coming. Multiple insiders have now confirmed that this video will was not merely an emotional farewell. It was a final act of agency, a preemptive strike to prevent what the king allegedly feared most, the rewriting of his wishes after his death. In other words, this video was recorded not just to speak from beyond the grave, but to ensure that others could not twist his legacy, challenge his decisions, or seize control of the narrative. Among those closest to the situation, whispers abound. Some say King Charles's message singles out his youngest son, Prince Harry, in an unexpected way. Others believe it contains a scathing rebuke of certain royal courtiers who mishandled recent scandals. There's talk that Camilla, the queen consort, may receive unprecedented authority, or perhaps quite the opposite. There's even chatter that the video touches on Prince William's future and how his reign should begin in the shadow of a father's unfinished business. This moment marks a rare convergence of personal tragedy and national consequence. And as journalists, commentators, and citizens around the globe try to make sense of it, one thing becomes painfully clear. This is not a story that ends with a press release. This is not a tidy royal footnote. This is a reckoning long overdue. So why now? Why would the king choose this exact moment to speak, publicly, vulnerably, and on video? Some insiders suggest it was fear. Others say it was duty. But perhaps it was both. With his health worsening, the clock is ticking faster than anyone expected. Every day brings the possibility of an abrupt decline. Every hour is an opportunity either seized or lost. And so, the king made his choice. To face the nation before fate could silence him. In doing so, he may have changed everything. Because with this revelation, the king has not only told the world about his illness, he's forced his family, his court, and his country to confront the future in the starkest possible terms. A future in which long-held assumptions are being upended. A future in which not everyone wearing a crown may keep it. And a future in which one man's final message could alter the monarchy forever. The days ahead will not be easy. Tensions are already mounting within palace walls. Legal teams are reportedly reviewing the video will. Some senior royals are in damage control mode. Others are preparing for the storm they know is coming. But one truth now looms above all others. The king has spoken, and he cannot be unheard. This is where our story begins. The existence of a video will, especially from a reigning monarch, is unprecedented in modern royal history. While monarchs have long left written instructions, codicils, and hand-delivered sealed letters to be opened upon their death, a personal video, directly addressing not just the family but potentially the nation and even the Commonwealth, crosses into uncharted territory. It's both intimate and disruptive, direct yet defiant. And for King Charles III, it may be the most powerful act of his reign. According to multiple sources close to Buckingham Palace, the decision to record the video was made several weeks before the king's most recent hospitalization. While the cancer diagnosis had been known to enter royal circles for months, the turning point came during a private meeting with his most trusted physicians. They informed him that his condition had moved into a more aggressive phase. The treatments were no longer yielding the expected progress. The cancer, once thought manageable, had spread. The prognosis had shifted from optimistic to uncertain. Those in the room say the king did not flinch. He listened quietly, absorbed the information, and after a long pause, uttered a single sentence, "It's time I say what must be said." That statement set off a whirlwind of confidential preparations. A secure room inside Windsor Castle was converted into a private recording studio. Trusted members of his communications team were sworn to absolute secrecy. Legal advisors reviewed constitutional protocols. And one chilly afternoon, Charles sat down, looked directly into the camera, and began to speak. Insiders familiar with the recording describe it as somber but unflinching. The king does not wear a crown. There is no royal backdrop, no elaborate stagecraft. He wears a simple navy suit. A family portrait sits to his left, a lit candle to his right. The atmosphere is quiet, solemn. And his words, measured, deliberate, carry the weight of finality. He begins with gratitude, thanking the British people and the Commonwealth for their support, their loyalty, and their belief in the institution he has tried to uphold. But soon, the tone shifts. He speaks not just as a monarch, but as a father, a husband, and a man who has lived through public scrutiny and private torment. He acknowledges his failures, his missteps with Diana, the long years of misunderstanding with his sons, and his regrets about certain decisions made in haste or fear. This is not the sanitized voice of royal PR. It is the voice of a man with nothing left to protect but the truth. Then comes the core of the message. According to those who've seen the full video, the king names names. He identifies individuals within the royal household whom he believes have undermined unity, manipulated public opinion, or abused their positions of influence. These revelations are not vague. They are precise, documented, and delivered with the clarity of a man who no longer fears the political consequences. He singles out 3 aides for what he describes as years of palace intrigue, whisper campaigns, media leaks, and character assassinations aimed at driving a wedge between his sons. He references key dates, meetings, and decisions that were, in his words, infiltrated by ambition masked as loyalty. While he stops short of calling for legal consequences, he makes it clear that these individuals should not be allowed to shape the future of the monarchy. But the section that reportedly brings the king to tears, visibly, uncontrollably, is when he turns to his sons. He begins with William, expressing pride in his maturity, his steadiness, and his readiness to take on greater responsibility. He urges him to lead with compassion, not rigidity. He warns against letting protocol outweigh humanity. And in a rare moment of vulnerability, he says, "I was not always the father you needed, but I always hoped to be the example you deserved." Then he addresses Harry. Observers say this portion is the most emotionally charged. The king acknowledges their estrangement, the media warfare, the public statements that tore apart their private bonds. But he also takes responsibility. He admits to failing Harry at critical moments. He references Harry's pain after the loss of his mother, his feeling of isolation within the royal institution, and the rift that deepened after his marriage. In a voice trembling with emotion, the king reportedly says, "I did not always understand you, but I never stopped loving you. I ask only that you remember the best of me, not the worst of us." But the message is not merely sentimental. It is directive. The king outlines his wishes in exact terms. He names the charitable initiatives he wants continued under his name. He details the fate of certain royal properties, some of which he believes should be turned into public spaces. And, most controversially, he makes declarations about titles, roles, and responsibilities. The video it turns out, is not just an emotional message, it is an operational guide. One source close to the royal legal team confirms that the king explicitly states his desire for Prince William to begin assuming more formal leadership duties immediately. He urges the Privy Council and senior courtiers to accelerate William's preparation for full sovereignty. Though he does not abdicate in the video, the tone is clear. The king knows his time is limited, and he wants a smooth, seamless transition. He also makes reference to Queen Camilla. According to those familiar with the contents, he praises her support and loyalty but also expresses concern for the undue pressure she may face in the months ahead. He instructs the public and the media to treat her with the dignity befitting her station, but also emphasizes that the future should belong to the younger generation. The message is both a protection and a limitation. It's his way of shielding her without anointing her with future authority beyond her current role. Perhaps the most explosive portion of the video involves Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. The king addresses the controversy surrounding their departure from royal duties, their interviews, their legal battles with the media, and the publication of Harry's memoir. He does not express anger. Instead, he expresses sorrow that a family feud became a global spectacle. He urges reconciliation, but not at any cost. And in a stunning twist, he reportedly offers Harry a path back into the royal fold, on one condition, that his return be based on service, not celebrity. That single stipulation: service, not celebrity. could redefine the very terms of royal participation for future generations. It also reveals the king's core belief that the monarchy must be a vessel of public duty, not a platform for personal branding. The reaction inside the palace has been swift and intense. Within 24 hours of the video's recording, top legal advisors began discussing the ramifications. Could the contents of a video will carry legal weight? Could they override written documents? Could they be released to the public posthumously without parliamentary involvement? According to legal experts, the answer is complicated. In the United Kingdom, wills are typically written and executed through formal channels. A video testament, while emotionally powerful, may not be legally binding in the traditional sense. However, given the unique constitutional position of a monarch, such a document could serve as a strong moral directive, especially if the king's formal written will aligns with its contents. But the real issue isn't legal. It's political, it's personal, and it's explosive. Within hours of the recording, reports began surfacing that several senior royals, including at least one close advisor to Queen Camilla, urged the king to destroy the footage. They argued it would destabilize the monarchy, that it was too raw, too honest, too vulnerable. But the king refused. He reportedly told them, "I will not die in silence." And that refusal to retreat has now set in motion a series of events that could reshape the monarchy for generations. As of this writing, the video is securely stored in multiple locations, a digital copy within the Royal Archives, a physical drive held in a secure vault at Windsor, and a private copy entrusted to a senior cleric within the Church of England. It will not be released unless specific conditions are met, namely, the king's death or an irreversible medical incapacitation. But its very existence has already shifted the dynamics within the royal family. It has created anxiety, anger, and a deep sense of urgency, and it has cast a long shadow over every public appearance, every palace statement, and every decision made in the coming weeks. The British monarchy has endured wars, scandals, divorces, and abdications, but never before has it stood on the brink of transformation driven by the final words of a living king, spoken not behind closed doors, but recorded for all to see. What happens when a monarch decides not to trust the future to protocol but to his own voice? We're about to find out. When the existence of King Charles III's video will first came to light within royal circles, the immediate fallout was one of confusion, fear, and frantic damage control. But no reaction was more anticipated or more fraught with emotional weight than that of Prince Harry. The estranged younger son of the monarch, living thousands of miles away in California, was not informed of the video directly by the king. Instead, he received word through an intermediary, an unexpected call from a senior palace aide, made under strict instruction from Queen Camilla. According to sources close to the Sussex camp, Harry had just returned home from a speaking engagement in San Francisco when the call came in. The message was brief, and the tone formal. His Majesty has recorded a private message. It concerns matters of family and succession. You will be contacted shortly regarding its contents. The line went dead. There was no further detail, no warmth, no preparation for what was to come. Just an announcement that left Harry standing in stunned silence in the middle of his Montecito kitchen. Meghan, according to insiders, was present during the call. One source close to the couple claims her immediate reaction was protective and defensive. She reportedly urged Harry not to engage until they had full clarity on what was being said about them. The idea of the king recording a video that might discuss her or their children without prior warning or participation was, to her, a betrayal of any remaining trust. But Harry, visibly shaken, insisted on seeing it, not for public response, not for damage control, but because, as he reportedly told a confidant later that evening, "I need to hear my father's voice before it's too late." Arrangements were made through the palace's legal team. Within 48 hours, Harry was granted access to a viewing room at the British consulate in Los Angeles. It was made clear that this was not a media preview, nor a political consultation. This was for his eyes only, no copies, no recordings, no representatives. Just a single laptop, a locked room, and a royal witness standing guard outside. What happened during that viewing remains one of the most intensely guarded secrets in modern royal history. But leaks, as always, find their way to light. According to two separate sources who spoke under condition of anonymity, Prince Harry watched the entire video without interruption. He did not take notes. He did not speak. But as the king began the section addressed directly to him, he reportedly placed both hands on his knees, lowered his head, and began to weep. The rawness of the moment, captured only by those present nearby, reveals a man torn between two worlds, his past in the institution that defined him, and his present in a life built in defiance of it. The emotional core of the king's message to Harry was not anger, but sorrow. He did not lash out. He did not accuse. He mourned the distance, the public feuds, the loss of brotherhood. And he offered something Harry had not expected, an olive branch, wrapped in one final condition. If you wish to return, return not to the throne, but to service. Let duty define you, not fame. That line hit Harry harder than any headline or tabloid scandal. For years, he had wrestled with the contradiction of wanting to make a difference while rejecting the strictures of palace life. His campaigns on mental health, veterans' issues, and racial injustice had won praise worldwide, but were often seen as undermining the monarchy's apolitical stance. Now, his father's message offered a paradoxical invitation. Come back, but only if you leave behind the very methods that had given you independence. In the hours after viewing the video, Harry reportedly remained in the consulate, refusing to speak with staff or aides. He paced the room. He reread printed transcripts provided under seal. And then he made a call not to Meghan, not to William, but to a trusted therapist he had worked with for years. The emotional weight of the moment, as described by insiders, was so intense that he delayed his return home by a full day, opting instead to stay overnight in Los Angeles at a private hotel under an assumed name. Meghan's reaction to his emotional response was complex. On the one hand, she reportedly expressed sympathy for the pain Harry was feeling. On the other, she reminded him that the royal family had a history of strategic outreach that often served their public image more than personal reconciliation. Her words, shared by a source close to the couple, were pointed. Don't let his final words trap you in the same institution that broke you. This internal conflict has now consumed Harry's daily life. Publicly, he has remained silent. No statements. No interviews. No leaks from his official team. But behind the scenes, movement is underway. He has reportedly reached out through legal intermediaries to request a meeting with senior palace officials. Not for negotiations, but for clarity. He wants to know, according to insiders, what a return based on service might actually look like. Would it involve relocating to the UK? Would Meghan be included in any such arrangement? Would their children, Archie and Lilibet, be granted royal protection or roles in the future? The palace has yet to respond. Meanwhile, Harry has confided in a small circle of friends, including 2 military veterans and a former palace press secretary, about the moral weight of his decision. One confidant described Harry as being caught in a storm of conflicting legacies, the desire to honor his father's dying wish, the fear of abandoning his new life, and the ever-present ghost of his mother, Diana. Indeed, sources say Harry has been rewatching old interviews of his mother, particularly the infamous Panorama interview in which she spoke about being isolated within the royal family. That footage, long buried in the archives of the BBC, has been a recurring touchstone for Harry. In her eyes, he sees the same anguish he feels now. In her voice, he hears warnings he cannot ignore. Adding another layer of complexity is Prince William's position. While the two brothers have not spoken directly since the revelation of the video will, intermediaries have exchanged messages. William, according to palace sources, is torn. On one hand, he supports the king's desire for reconciliation. On the other, he remains wary of Harry's public platform and the unpredictability of his media engagements. Trust, insiders say, has not been rebuilt. And without trust, any formal re-entry into royal life will be deeply contested. This friction is not limited to the brothers. Queen Camilla has reportedly expressed strong reservations about Harry's return in any form. She remains deeply bruised by past comments made by Harry and Meghan, particularly in their high-profile interviews and memoir. Her position, whispered among palace insiders, is uncompromising. The door can only open if he walks back through it alone. This internal palace debate has turned what was intended to be a personal gesture from the king into a political crisis for the monarchy. The mere possibility of Harry returning, even in a limited, symbolic role, has triggered concerns about media scrutiny, public opinion, and institutional coherence. The monarchy, already weathering the storm of Charles's declining health, now faces a potential schism over succession, image, and modernity. Outside the palace walls, public reaction has been sharply divided. In the United Kingdom, opinion polls show a population split. Older generations largely oppose any return by Harry, viewing him as a disruptive influence. Younger demographics, however, appear more sympathetic, framing his journey as one of individual growth and accountability. In the United States, Harry and Meghan remain a polarizing topic. Adored by many, criticized by others, but undeniably influential. The media, predictably, has fanned the flames. British tabloids have run headlines proclaiming Harry's last chance, while American outlets frame the story as a Shakespearean family drama. Royal commentators have returned to their soapboxes, dissecting every potential scenario. Will Harry attend the King's next public address? Will there be a public reunion with William? Will the video ever be released to the public? As of now, Harry's official team remains on lockdown. No statements. No scheduled interviews. No planned appearances. But within the quiet confines of his Montecito home, the decision looms. What kind of son does he want to be? What kind of father does he want to become? And is there still a role, however small, however symbolic, for him in the monarchy that made him and nearly broke him? His silence may not last much longer. The King's message, captured forever in high definition, continues to echo across continents, across ideologies, across generations. And in its wake, a son now wrestles not just with his father's legacy, but with his own. While the world was watching the emotional toll King Charles's final video message had taken on Prince Harry, another figure was navigating her own private storm, Meghan Markle. As Harry wrestled with grief and obligation, Meghan found herself at the crossroads of loyalty and legacy, wondering whether the past she had escaped was threatening to pull her family and her future back into its orbit. The Sussexes had worked hard to redefine their identity after leaving royal life. They built Archewell, inked multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify, and carefully crafted their image around activism, philanthropy, and personal empowerment. But all of that now stood precariously on the edge, at risk of being overshadowed by a message from a dying king that neither of them had anticipated. Behind closed doors, Meghan's reaction to the King's final will and video message was anything but passive. According to close associates, the Duchess of Sussex was immediately suspicious of the timing and content of the message. She reportedly questioned whether it was truly an unfiltered expression of a father's final wishes or a calculated attempt to pull Harry back into a system that had once rejected both of them. Meghan's protectiveness over her husband and children, so often painted as controlling by critics, was, in this moment, anchored in fear. Fear that the royal institution had found a way to reclaim Harry through sentimentality, leveraging his love for his father as a tool of manipulation. For Meghan, the message was more than a final plea for reconciliation. It was a reminder of the power dynamics they had spent years escaping. The monarchy, with all its grandeur and dysfunction, had not changed. It had simply evolved its strategy. Inside their Montecito home, conversations grew tense. Meghan reportedly questioned whether Harry's potential return, even under the guise of service, would come with inevitable sacrifices of autonomy, of reputation, and of personal safety. She also raised the question of their children's future. If Harry were to re-engage with the crown, what precedent would that set for Archie and Lilibet? Would they be drawn into a world they had never chosen, subjected to the same scrutiny and expectations that once suffocated their father? These weren't theoretical questions for Meghan. They were rooted in lived experience. Her time as a working royal had been marked by tabloid harassment, racial microaggressions, and institutional coldness. The family photo that was never approved for public release, the snubs at official events, the press leaks, each memory resurfaced now with sharper edges. And now, the prospect of returning, even indirectly, to that environment was nothing short of traumatic. Sources say Meghan initially pushed back hard on the idea of Harry considering the King's request. In private, she reportedly asked him, "What's the cost of going back?" She wasn't questioning his love for his father. She was questioning the terms of reconciliation. Was the King's message an act of healing or a reassertion of royal authority cloaked in kindness? Yet, Meghan is nothing if not strategic. Despite her misgivings, she understood the importance of optics and the weight this video message carried on the world stage. Publicly opposing a dying man's final wish would not only be controversial, it would be catastrophic. If the Sussex brand had any hope of maintaining credibility as empathetic figures fighting for justice, they couldn't afford to appear vindictive or dismissive. This led to an intense series of internal deliberations. Behind the scenes, Meghan consulted not just with Harry but with their joint legal team, media advisors, and a small group of trusted friends in Los Angeles and London. Among those consulted were a crisis PR specialist, a prominent human rights attorney, and a well-known philanthropist with royal connections. The question was never simple: should Harry honor his father's request? It was, what does honoring that request look like in a way that doesn't unravel everything they've built? One advisor reportedly floated the idea of Harry accepting a symbolic role, perhaps a global ambassador for a charitable initiative connected to the monarchy, while maintaining residence in the United States and avoiding formal duties. Meghan reportedly saw this as a potential compromise, but one fraught with risk. Symbolism, after all, has never been neutral in royal circles. Every gesture, every handshake, every smile would be scrutinized. And the British media, always hungry for cracks in the Sussex armor, would seize on any appearance of weakness or submission. Still, Meghan also recognized the emotional pull this moment held for Harry. She had seen it before, after Prince Philip's funeral, after Queen Elizabeth's death, and even in the quiet moments when Harry would replay old voicemail messages from Diana. His bond with his family, fractured as it was, remained a deep well of unresolved longing. And now, with the king's health deteriorating and the monarchy extending a conditional hand, Meghan knew her husband stood on the edge of a choice that would define his legacy. She also knew that her support, or lack thereof, could tip the scale. According to an insider familiar with their discussions, Meghan ultimately told Harry, "If you need to go back, I won't stop you. But I won't follow you there, not again." The statement was not an ultimatum. It was a boundary. For Meghan, returning to royal life in any form was a red line. She had given that chapter of her life everything, and it had nearly broken her. This revelation, once shared with Harry, reportedly led to one of the most emotional conversations the couple had experienced since their departure from royal life. The discussion lasted late into the night, covering everything from their hopes for their children to the fears they rarely voiced aloud. What would the world say if Harry went back and Meghan didn't? Would they be portrayed as divided? Would Meghan be vilified as the woman who kept his son from his dying father? Would Harry be painted as weak, as crawling back to the family he had once condemned? The stakes, both personal and public, could not have been higher. In the days that followed, Meghan became more reserved. She canceled several public engagements, including a planned appearance at a women's leadership forum in New York. Sources say she wanted to avoid press scrutiny while decisions were still being weighed. She also stopped posting on her personal social channels and delayed the next episode of her podcast, citing family prioritization. Behind this calculated quiet, however, Meghan was still working. She commissioned a private legal memorandum analyzing the implications of any renewed royal affiliation. The document reportedly laid out multiple scenarios, each with legal, financial, and reputational consequences. One scenario involved Harry accepting the king's request but remaining outside of the United Kingdom. Another outlined the potential fallout if the couple publicly rejected the offer. The most complex scenario explored a split path: Harry re-engaging with the royal family while Meghan remained separate, both physically and institutionally. This last scenario was the most difficult to consider, not just for Meghan, but for the Sussex brand. Much of their strength as a public entity came from their unity. A divided image, even one based on mutual respect, would complicate their messaging and potentially strain their business ventures. Yet, for Meghan, this might be the only path forward that preserved her peace. Complicating matters further was the reaction from the royal establishment. Leaked reports suggested that Queen Camilla had expressed firm opposition to Meghan re-entering any official royal circle. Her alleged remarks to a close aide, "She's had her say, and now she must stay out," were widely circulated in private diplomatic circles. This hardened Meghan's stance. If she was being framed as the obstacle yet again, she would rather remove herself from the conversation entirely than fight a battle she couldn't win. Meanwhile, Harry was increasingly torn. The man who once walked behind his mother's coffin in silence was now walking a line between two lives, knowing that any decision he made would reverberate for decades. And Meghan, the woman who had stood by him through exile and rebirth, was watching her partner being pulled toward a past that had once tried to erase her. Still, Meghan was not bitter. Those close to her describe her mindset as protective, not possessive. She wanted Harry to make the choice his conscience could live with. But she also made it clear that choice could not come at the cost of her mental health, her children's stability, or the boundary she had fought to establish. As the sun set on another quiet day in Montecito, the Sussex household sat in limbo. No official statements. No public plans. Just the sound of their children playing in the garden, unaware of the storm gathering outside their private world. And Meghan, former actress, former duchess, present mother and strategist, waited. She knew the decision wasn't hers to make. But she also knew that once it was made, nothing would ever be the same. The moment the news of King Charles's final message and will became public, the global media erupted. Headlines flashed across screens and websites in every time zone, each offering its own spin on what was quickly becoming a defining moment in royal history. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the glare of public scrutiny intensified beyond anything they had previously experienced. Media outlets in the United Kingdom and across the Commonwealth countries were quick to capitalize on the story. British tabloids, known for their relentless and often ruthless coverage of the royal family, seemed particularly torn. On one hand, some framed the king's message as a noble act of reconciliation. A dying monarch reaching out to his son in a moment of vulnerability, demonstrating that family ties, no matter how strained, still mattered above all else. These narratives were peppered with tear-jerking images of the king's solemn visage, his voice breaking as he pleaded for Harry's return, a man clearly battling both physical frailty and emotional regret. On the other hand, the tabloid press, ever eager to fan royal drama, also portrayed the message as a calculated move. They questioned the sincerity of the king's wishes, suggesting the monarchy was orchestrating a public relations campaign designed to pressure Harry back into the fold, effectively using the king's health crisis to manipulate public opinion. Headlines speculated wildly on Harry's next move. Would he capitulate? Would Meghan resist? Would the Sussexes split once again, this time in the unforgiving public eye? Social media amplified every narrative, and the conversation quickly became a global conversation. Twitter threads exploded with millions of comments, memes, and hashtags that alternately praised and vilified the Sussexes. Supporters of Harry and Meghan saw the king's message as a hopeful sign of healing and renewal, proof that the royal family, at its core, was capable of compassion and change. They shared emotional posts recalling Prince Harry's tribute to his late mother, Princess Diana, and celebrated his courageous stand against royal protocol in pursuit of personal truth. Conversely, critics accused the Sussexes of playing the victim, arguing that Harry had already abandoned his duties and that Meghan's influence was pulling him further away from his responsibilities. Some claimed that Harry's hesitation to respond to the king's request was disrespectful, if not outright disloyal. Influential royal commentators and pundits, many of whom had long cast Meghan in a negative light, seized the moment to push their narrative of Meghan as a divisive figure, using language that echoed long-standing stereotypes and coded biases. The media's treatment of Meghan, in particular, sparked a renewed debate over race, gender, and power in the press. While some outlets made an effort to approach the story with sensitivity, many reverted to familiar tropes, questioning her motives, scrutinizing her every word and gesture, and casting doubt on her authenticity as a royal figure. Headlines alluded to the Meghan effect, suggesting that her involvement in the saga was the root cause of the family's discord. Such coverage drew swift backlash from civil rights organizations and public figures who accused the media of perpetuating a campaign of harassment and racism. In the United States, the response was notably different but no less intense. American media outlets, many of which had championed the Sussexes since their royal exit, expressed sympathy for Harry's plight. There was a sense that the king's message opened a door for healing, and coverage emphasized the human element, grief, family bonds, and the universal desire for reconciliation. Opinion pieces in major newspapers and magazines reflected on the cultural differences between British royal traditions and American values, exploring how those tensions had shaped the Sussexes' departure from royal life. Entertainment news shows featured round-the-clock discussions about what the king's final message meant for the future of the monarchy, with celebrity commentators weighing in on Meghan's role and influence. Interviews with royal experts often painted Meghan as a powerful yet polarizing figure, someone whose ambitions challenged centuries-old traditions, but who also brought a modern, inclusive vision to the royal family. The complex narrative drew viewers and readers into passionate debates about legacy, identity, and the meaning of family in the 21st century. Yet, amid the headlines and soundbites, the media frenzy also began to reveal cracks beneath the surface. Some journalists and insiders started questioning the accuracy and motivations behind the leaked information. Was the timing of the king's video message truly spontaneous? Who authorized its release? Were there factions within the palace using this moment to push their own agendas? These questions gave rise to a shadow war in the background, a battle of influence and control over the narrative that would shape history. The leaks themselves became a subject of intense investigation. The identity of the individual or group responsible for disseminating the video and excerpts from the will was fiercely guarded. Rumors swirled of palace aides, royal insiders, and even external operatives using the information to manipulate public perception. Some suspected that Queen Camilla's faction had played a role, aiming to weaken Meghan's standing and isolate Harry. Others believed Harry's supporters within the palace might have leaked the message as a means of pressuring his family to be more accommodating. The public was left to sift through conflicting accounts, unsure whom to believe. In a media landscape saturated with misinformation and sensationalism, distinguishing fact from fiction became a daunting task. The fallout extended beyond traditional news outlets. Fan communities and royal forums buzzed with speculation, while podcasts and YouTube channels churned out hours of analysis, conspiracy theories, and emotional reactions. The Sussexes' social media platforms became battlegrounds, with followers rallying in support or condemnation. The couple's representatives faced relentless inquiries, crafting careful responses that sought to balance transparency with privacy. This media maelstrom had profound consequences. For Harry and Meghan, every move was scrutinized. Private moments were leaked, relationships strained under the pressure of constant public attention. Trust within the royal family appeared further eroded as palace officials grappled with controlling the narrative. Meanwhile, for the broader public, the story became a mirror reflecting societal debates about race, tradition, media ethics, and the nature of celebrity. The media frenzy also had tangible impacts on mental health. Both Harry and Meghan had spoken publicly in the past about their struggles with anxiety and depression, linked in part to relentless media coverage. This latest surge in attention threatened to reopen old wounds. Supporters expressed concern for their well-being, while critics accused them of seeking sympathy or exploiting the story for personal gain. Journalists themselves were caught in a moral quandary. The drive for scoops and exclusives clashed with calls for responsible reporting. Some reporters stepped back, advocating for a more respectful approach during what was a deeply personal family crisis. Others doubled down, convinced that the public's right to know outweighed any potential harm. This polarization underscored a deeper issue: how modern media can amplify personal tragedy into public spectacle, and how those at the center of the story must navigate the treacherous waters of fame, privacy, and truth. In the midst of the chaos, Harry and Meghan remained largely silent. Their public statements were brief and measured, emphasizing themes of family, healing, and hope. Yet, behind the scenes, the couple was actively managing the fallout, balancing media strategy with personal boundaries, seeking legal counsel, and preparing for whatever came next. For the royal family, the media frenzy was both a challenge and an opportunity. Some saw it as a chance to modernize and reconnect with a public that had grown skeptical of monarchy. Others viewed it as a threat to tradition and stability. As the story unfolded, it became clear that the media's role would be pivotal in shaping the legacy of King Charles's final wishes and the Sussexes' place within that legacy. Ultimately, the frenzy revealed the profound complexities of being royal in the digital age, where every word, every gesture, and every moment can be magnified, distorted, and debated on a global scale. It was a reminder that in today's world, the battle for hearts and minds often played out not just in palaces, but in headlines and hashtags. As the media storm continued to rage, the world waited to see how Harry and Meghan would respond and what the next chapter in this historic saga would bring. In the wake of King Charles's poignant final message and the ensuing media tempest, the royal household faced an unprecedented crisis. The palace, a centuries-old institution steeped in tradition and ceremony, suddenly found itself thrust into a whirlwind of public scrutiny and internal turmoil that tested its resilience in ways few could have predicted. The initial official response from Buckingham Palace was carefully measured. A brief statement acknowledged the king's wishes and emphasized the family's hope for reconciliation and healing. But behind the polished facade, palace officials were scrambling to contain the fallout and control the narrative. Senior courtiers convened urgent meetings, analyzing every possible scenario. The challenge was immense: how to honor the king's final request without appearing weak or divided. The palace needed to maintain its image of unity and stability, yet the deep fissures within the family were no secret to anyone paying attention. One of the first strategic moves involved managing the flow of information. The palace's communications team tightened control over press releases and official statements. They carefully selected spokespeople to deliver messages, often choosing seasoned royal correspondents with a reputation for discretion. At the same time, unofficial channels were used to leak select information to sympathetic media outlets, a tactic designed to shape public perception subtly. Behind closed doors, tensions simmered. The royal family was not a monolith, but a collection of individuals with differing loyalties, ambitions, and grievances. Queen Camilla, who had long been seen as a stabilizing force within the family, reportedly took a hard line. She viewed the king's message as an attempt to mend fences, but was wary of granting the Sussexes too much influence or prominence. Other family members expressed a mixture of sympathy and frustration. Some believed Harry and Meghan's public distancing from royal duties had gone too far, making reconciliation difficult. Others worried that ongoing media battles were damaging the monarchy's reputation and feared the long-term consequences for the institution. In this delicate environment, palace advisors explored every avenue to bring about a resolution. Private meetings between senior royals and Harry's representatives were arranged, though details remained confidential. Sources close to the family hinted at offers being made, compromises on titles, roles, and responsibilities designed to lure Harry back into the fold while preserving his and Meghan's dignity. These negotiations were complicated by Meghan's own position. Her past experiences with the press, the racism and hostility she endured, and her desire for independence made any potential return fraught with difficulty. Advisors within the palace debated how to address these concerns without alienating her further or sparking new controversies. In parallel, the palace ramped up efforts to bolster the monarchy's image more broadly. Charitable engagements, public appearances, and carefully crafted messaging aimed to remind the public of the family's ongoing commitment to service and tradition. These efforts were not merely about optics, they reflected a genuine desire to preserve the institution in a rapidly changing world. One particularly notable strategy involved leveraging the influence of other family members who remained popular with the public. Prince William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales, took on increased roles, emphasizing continuity and stability. Their appearances at community events and international engagements showcased a modern yet respectful approach to monarchy, contrasting with the turmoil surrounding the Sussexes. The palace also sought to engage with younger generations, recognizing that the future of the monarchy depended on its relevance to a changing society. Social media campaigns, outreach to diverse communities, and collaborations with cultural figures were part of a broader initiative to modernize the royal brand. Despite these efforts, the palace faced criticism from all sides. Traditionalists accused the family of compromising its dignity by engaging too openly with the media. Progressives argued that the monarchy was failing to address deeper issues of inclusivity and transparency. The media frenzy surrounding the Sussexes only intensified these debates, highlighting the monarchy's struggle to balance tradition with modern expectations. Legal considerations also played a significant role in the palace's response. The release of the king's will and final message raised questions about privacy, confidentiality, and the potential for further leaks. The palace's legal team worked to safeguard sensitive information and prevent unauthorized disclosures that could inflame tensions. At the same time, the palace monitored public opinion closely. Polling data and focus groups provided insights into how different demographics perceived the unfolding drama. This feedback informed communication strategies and helped prioritize issues for public messaging. One particularly challenging aspect was managing the expectations of Commonwealth nations, many of which viewed the British monarchy as a symbol of colonial legacy and evolving identity. Leaders in countries such as Canada, Australia, and New Zealand expressed concern over the negative attention and the potential impact on their own ties to the crown. Diplomatic efforts were undertaken to reassure these nations and emphasize the monarchy's commitment to unity and respect. Internally, the palace began re-examining protocols and policies related to family dynamics, media relations, and crisis management. Advisors recommended reforms to prevent future leaks and improve support for family members facing public scrutiny. These discussions signaled a recognition that the traditional royal model needed to adapt to survive. For Harry and Meghan, the palace's maneuvers underscored the difficult path ahead. While the king's final wishes opened a door, the complexities of palace politics and media pressure made any reconciliation a delicate balancing act. The couple had to weigh their desire for family unity against their need for autonomy and protection from the relentless spotlight. In the broader context, the royal response highlighted the enduring challenges of monarchy in the modern era. Institutions founded on heritage and ceremony must now navigate a landscape shaped by instant communication, social activism, and shifting cultural values. The stakes were high, not only for individual family members but for the future of the crown itself. As the palace continued its strategic moves, the world watched closely. Every announcement, every appearance, and every leaked detail was analyzed for clues about what might come next. The royal household found itself at a crossroads, caught between honoring tradition and embracing change, between protecting privacy and engaging transparency. The unfolding saga was a testament to the complexity of family and power, of history and identity. It revealed that even the most storied institutions are vulnerable to the tides of time and the pressures of public life. In this critical moment, the palace's response would shape not only the fate of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle but also the legacy of King Charles and the monarchy for generations to come. The moment King Charles III's health battle became public, it triggered a media frenzy unlike any the monarchy had seen in decades. News outlets around the world scrambled to cover every angle, from official statements to whispered rumors. The story quickly evolved from a simple health update into a complex drama involving palace politics, family tensions, and national identity. The media's role in shaping the narrative was enormous. Headlines ranged from sympathetic to sensational, reflecting the diverse and often conflicting perspectives on the king's condition and what it meant for the future of the monarchy. One of the earliest and most striking features of the coverage was the intense focus on the human aspect of the story. Journalists sought to paint a vivid picture of King Charles as not just a monarch, but a man facing a deeply personal struggle. Profiles recounted his decades-long dedication to public service, his environmental advocacy, and his complex family life. These stories resonated with audiences, helping to humanize a figure often seen as distant or symbolic. Yet, alongside this empathetic reporting, there was a surge of speculation and intrigue. The British tabloid press, in particular, thrived on the drama. Rumors about the king's prognosis, secret treatments, and palace infighting filled pages and airwaves. Speculative articles questioned whether the king's illness would force a premature abdication or accelerate plans for Prince William's succession. Television news programs dedicated special segments to expert panels, dissecting every available piece of information. Medical professionals offered cautious interpretations, while royal commentators debated the implications for the crown. This blend of expert analysis and tabloid sensationalism created a media environment that was as confusing as it was compelling. Social media played a critical role in amplifying the story. Platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok became battlegrounds for public opinion. Hashtags related to King Charles's health trended worldwide, and millions of users shared their thoughts, prayers, and theories. The immediacy of social media allowed news to spread rapidly but also made it difficult to control misinformation. The media's relentless attention put enormous pressure on the royal family. Every public appearance by the king, no matter how brief, was scrutinized for signs of weakness or improvement. Paparazzi photos and video clips were analyzed frame by frame, searching for clues about his condition. This invasive coverage sparked debates about privacy and ethics, with many questioning whether the monarchy or any individual should endure such intense public scrutiny during a health crisis. International media coverage reflected different cultural attitudes toward royalty and illness. In the United States, for example, the story was often framed through the lens of celebrity and drama, emphasizing the personal and familial conflicts. Commonwealth countries tended to focus more on constitutional implications and the stability of their own ties to the crown. Amidst the coverage, certain moments became defining flashpoints. Leaks of confidential information, whether intentional or accidental, fueled conspiracy theories and deepened divisions within the family. The emergence of a video message from King Charles, intended for Prince William, became a media sensation, with experts debating its authenticity and significance. Some argued it was a heartfelt attempt at reconciliation, while others saw it as a calculated move to influence public opinion. Public reaction was equally complex and varied. Polls showed a mixture of concern, sympathy, and anxiety among the British public. Many expressed support for the king and his family, rallying behind the monarchy as a symbol of national unity. Others voiced frustration over what they saw as excessive secrecy or questioned the relevance of the monarchy in a modern democracy. The story also sparked a wave of personal stories and tributes from ordinary citizens. Social media became a repository of memories and reflections on King Charles's life and service, with many sharing photos, letters, and anecdotes. These grassroots expressions of affection added a deeply emotional layer to the unfolding news. However, the media storm was not without controversy. Accusations of biased reporting, sensationalism, and invasion of privacy surfaced regularly. Some journalists were criticized for prioritizing headlines over accuracy or for perpetuating harmful stereotypes. The monarchy's critics used the situation to renew calls for reform or abolition, while supporters defended the institution's enduring value. The relationship between the palace and the media, historically complex and often fraught, reached a new level of tension. While some royal insiders worked to cultivate positive coverage through carefully managed appearances and strategic leaks, others sought to limit exposure and protect the king's privacy. This push and pull highlighted the delicate balance between transparency and discretion in the modern royal household. The media storm also had a significant impact on the global perception of the British monarchy. The intense focus on King Charles's health and family dynamics offered a rare glimpse behind the palace walls, demystifying the institution but also exposing its vulnerabilities. For some international observers, the coverage reinforced stereotypes of royal dysfunction, while for others, it elicited admiration for the king's resilience and dedication. Throughout this turbulent period, the media's coverage continued to evolve. As new developments emerged, medical updates, family statements, public reactions, the narrative shifted, reflecting the changing realities of the king's condition and the monarchy's response. For viewers and readers around the world, the media storm was a powerful reminder of the monarchy's significance, not only as a political institution but as a cultural symbol embedded in public consciousness. It also underscored the challenges of reporting on private matters in a public age, where the line between news and spectacle often blurs. In the end, the media's role was both illuminating and complicating. By bringing King Charles's health battle into the public eye, journalists helped foster empathy and awareness but also contributed to a climate of speculation and uncertainty. The question that lingered, and one that would shape future coverage, was how the monarchy would navigate this crisis, whether it could reconcile tradition with transparency and emerge stronger in the face of adversity. King Charles III's health battle did not exist in isolation. Behind the public facade of royal protocol and tradition, the illness rippled through the family's inner circle, testing relationships, reigniting old tensions, and forcing difficult conversations that had long been avoided. The dynamics within the royal household shifted in ways both subtle and seismic, revealing layers of complexity beneath the polished veneer. From the outset, there was no question that the king's worsening condition brought the family together in some ways, yet it also amplified existing fractures. Family members found themselves navigating a delicate balance between showing solidarity and protecting their own interests. Prince William and Prince Harry, who have long been the focus of public scrutiny for their fraught relationship, were suddenly thrust into an even more intense spotlight. The illness forced them into close proximity with decisions and moments that were deeply personal, challenging their ability to put aside differences for the sake of the family and the crown. William, as the heir apparent, faced the immense pressure of preparing for a future that might arrive sooner than expected. Interviews with close aides and royal experts suggest that the eldest son grappled with feelings of responsibility, anxiety, and uncertainty. His public appearances grew more frequent, each carefully choreographed but often tinged with a visible seriousness. Behind closed doors, sources describe a man trying to balance the demands of duty with the emotional weight of watching his father's health decline. Harry, living in exile from royal duties and increasingly estranged, confronted a different set of challenges. News of the king's illness revived conversations about loyalty, family bonds, and the possibility of reconciliation. Some insiders reveal that despite their public disagreements, Harry reached out privately, expressing concern and a willingness to support. Yet, the tension between Harry and other family members remained palpable, complicated by years of grievances and media battles. Other members of the royal family experienced their own emotional and political reckonings. Queen Consort Camilla, once a figure of controversy, became a steadfast presence at the king's side, sharing in the caretaking and representing the monarchy in his stead when possible. Her role evolved from that of a supportive spouse to a critical pillar in maintaining stability during the crisis. Interviews with palace insiders paint a picture of a woman navigating both public scrutiny and private sorrow, all while managing delicate family dynamics. Princess Anne, known for her pragmatic and often no-nonsense approach, took on an unexpectedly influential role. Sources indicate she was involved in coordinating family communications and advocating for greater transparency. Her reputation for straightforwardness brought both relief and friction, as not all family members agreed with her forthright stance. Meanwhile, younger royals and extended family members found themselves caught in a web of shifting allegiances and media speculation. Their roles, previously peripheral, became more pronounced as the spotlight